drift in this sea going where they're steered. Okay, so we are officially live 8/10/2023. A few minutes early, but we're going to maintain this as a consistent schedule. We were setting up everything today, and we're officially in the run phase. Crawling, I was looking for a place, trying to get an internet connection. Walking was pretty much live streaming from here where I could, setting up the headquarters. But now that we're 24/7, we're technically running. So we're hitting the ground in this next phase of the IPS. And so if you'll notice, the live stream is going to be continuous. And you can get the archives by subscribing at infiniteplane.live, and I will send them after. And you can find us on all of the podcast platforms: iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Apple, Spotify, and everything else. So it's very easy. Additionally, in this new 24/7 Discord chat, we have a voice chat where you can join 24/7. And after the live streams, I'll often be hanging out there, or before, and we can actually broadcast our group panel conversations there. We can do interviews there, etc. In fact, the first caller was Rocco Calzone. I had just turned on the new computer, just plugged it in, and he called, and he was reporting live from Maui. He's on the north side, not where the fire was, but we have someone again at ground zero. Anytime there's some devastating psyop or natural disaster hyped up or stimulated or simulated, whatever it happens to be, because we tend to suspend judgment here till we have enough information to make an informed decision, we tend to have somebody right there. I was just on Twitter, and one of my favorite channels, Les Luther, was commenting on this. He said, "Do we have anybody on the ground?" And I had pointed out that, yeah, actually we do. We do. And the phones are open, and you can access us, of course, on Skype. Just go to Infinite Plane Radio, or you can call the number, which is 1-505-349-0420. All right, all warfare is based on deception, San Tzu. This is on Illusion Warfare, or Les Luther's channel. He said, "Surely we must have boots on the ground, trustworthy guys or girls that can get to Maui with some real eyes." And that's a great point, real eyes in caps. Most people think of the camera lens as just eyes. I can just use those for a moment. Does Australia or the mainland USA not have a budget airlines that can get there cheap? The same way I got to Greece. And I commented there and I said, yeah, we actually have someone there. And we had a conversation about it. I actually recorded it. I'll upload it later. But the fact is, yeah, there is something, but what are we talking about? That's the thing. We have to make sure we're not falling into the trap of answering loaded questions or accepting a premise. Something happened, or something looks like it happened. But again, I want a little more information. You can't just call something fake unless you have something to counter what has been more or less accepted. Not that consensus is a defense, but if you're going to upset a big apple cart, you better bring something. You can't just totally shift the burden of proof. I mean, logically, I guess you can. They do. But, we hold ourselves to a higher standard, which is reality. All right, so let's see who's here in the chat. Okay, great. I see about 36 so far. We'll give a few more moments for others to show up. And if I have to, I'll send out a live text alert. Tyrone McCloskey says, "I used to wander into bars. Now I wander into YouTube." Joined by Into the Break. 737 is back. Rocco Calzone, 4:26 p.m. Hawaii time. Shannon Jones. If you have any more info, or if you want to just call and reiterate, please do. Jake the A-hole says, "I just broke down the Alabama brawl, and some of it looks legit." Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one. Because, I'm looking at it, and it looks real. But so does World Wrestling Entertainment. So that's not an argument for it being real. Then you look at it in the context of politics and how useful it's been. And then the guy who had the chair, his name's Reginald, or Reggie. Reggie with the chairman. The guy who was banging people on the heads. Okay, well, that got me thinking. First of all, he's 42. every one of these race war psyops has 42 attached to it. As we talk about, George Floyd's twin, Rosa Parks 42, Jackie Robinson 42. It's just a staple. And Reggie happens to be 42. Reggie means king. Made me think of Rodney King and the Rodney King judgment resulting in LA riots, which were ended shortly after Reginald Denny. There's that name, Reggie. Reggie gets hit on the head. Is by a brick. But see, you got the rioter with the brick hits the white trucker. You got the name Reggie. I'm just thinking a lot of it looks and feels psyopy and scripted. But does that mean it is? And then you have the 16-year-old who swam across the river. Well, that reminded me of the 16-year-old earlier this year in the spring who rang the wrong doorbell and an old white man shot him. And that was the narrative. You ring the wrong doorbell, you're going to get shot. Park in the wrong driveway, you're going to get shot. You get in the wrong car, you're going to get shot. Your basketball goes to the neighbor's yard, you're going to get shot. And I thought, okay, here you have the 16-year-old, the old white man, reintroduced. Let's see here. Into the Break says the brawl was WWE and WO. Which team? Jake the A-hole says the white lady on the ground got kicked and hit over the head of the chair. It looked real. The beginning, where the security guard threw his hat up in the air, looked WWE. Yeah. Well, you know what? I've been in this back and forth with someone in a email exchange about this. It looks real, not an argument. There's a lot of scripting, real or fake. It's being used to drive the usual narratives. But in terms of fakeability, yeah, most of it seems pretty fakeable. But I'd like some more information. When I saw that his name was Reggie and he was 42, and it made me think of that Reginald Denny thing. And then again, the 42. Like, we shouldn't be able to guess the age of the perps and victims in every single news story. Yet somehow we do. I mean, what explains that? And it's like, okay, give me the theme. Oh, it's a race war psyop. Okay, it's going to be a 42-year-old. So if you didn't know, the police want to talk to Montgomery Brawl's folding chair man. And you hear a folding chair hitting the white guy. Reginald Denny, LA riots, 1992, white truck driver Reginald Denny, he's white, not the truck, was pulled from the cab of his vehicle, beaten, smashed with a cinder block, and then rescued. So the name Reggie. And then, of course, Reggie being 42, and I think I have the etymology of the name. Folding chair man might be his fight name, but in the real world, he's Reggie Gray. Now, what's gray mean? Well, black and white makes gray. The 42-year-old man who, again, the chairman identified. And then the guy that got chased who owned the boat, his name was Chase Shipman. Chase Shipman. So again, these names. Now this is a comment from the email I referred to where I think this was, yes, here we go. Mr. Trustworthy sent this. He said, Mr. Chase Shipman being chased away from the ship says all you need to know. I wonder if Dr. Wayne Carver or Wayne Sexton were in the vicinity. Again, Wayne Carver does autopsies. One of the guys he thinks looks like George W. Bush. He says, Chase Shipman deserves a golden hoggy for the most psyopy name of 2023. MSM is pushing the hate crimes follow Trump rally narratives. This was their proof. Oh, I see. Trump rally, and then right afterward, you have a hate mob show up. Now, his commentary on this basically goes to the only part that had me wondering if this was real was the woman getting whooped. That part looked real, and that's what Jake the A-hole suggested too. Everything else looked very fake, like MLB Rush the Pitcher's Mound type of bench clearing brawls. It's naive to think these things cannot be staged. When Rodney King and Reginald Denny were staged 30 years ago, Chase Shipman being chased says all you need to know. And credit to Synchro Morpheus for that clue. That's another reason to join our Discord server. Now, if you just got here or you weren't here yesterday, we're new video 24/7. Everything's up. We've moved from the crawl to the walk to now the run phase. archives are available to anyone on the newsletter. We have a 24/7 voice chat where you can jump on if you have anything to say and you can't get on the phones. That's an option. That's an option. So, in other words, oh, you can get the Discord link at infiniteplane.live. If you can't call but you have Discord, that's another way to get in on the live streams. Infinite Plane Trotter says social engineering. Right. Okay, so caller, can you? I'm sorry if I muted you by accident. Give me just a moment here. We have a caller, and okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So, do you have an opinion on the Montgomery boatside brawl?
Oh, it is probably real and just uh, narrative fulfillment because fights and brawls like that happen all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. And I saw it and I ignored it because it wasn't even worth mentioning compared to all the other fights that I've seen and other instances. But what I've noticed is in most of the violence that I see, the violence is way more severe. It's not comical or funny, not even with a funny soundtrack. Like this to me is just it seems funny and staged, but I'm gonna have to look closer. I mean, some things are hard to fake, I guess.
Yeah, but you can scroll through like Twitter and see fights and real violence all the time, and it's just not that big a deal. But I think it like fit a narrative, white, black versus white, so they just like were able to mix real with fake and use it.
Yeah, that's another possibility. Like you have simulated events, stimulated events, and then you have real events that they exaggerate or co-opt. They do this with the weather, they do this with natural disasters, and if you have a real black and white fight, obviously the mainstream media would love to use that free. They don't have to pay crisis actors. Of course they're going to use that. It's a freebie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for calling. What else? What else did you have on your mind? I mean, we just kind of open phones, and it's pretty much open topics these days.
Oh, well, this is Rocco Calzone. I'm on Maui right now.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you called. Okay, good. So you're on the north side, so you weren't in the danger zone. But can you give the listeners a little bit of a background, or at least an idea of what you see from where you are?
Well, there's some. If you look at Maui, it's like two mountains, and you can really just drive like in a figure eight, like around the perimeter and through the valley between. So, and there's fires. Like fires actually happen every year. It gets really dry and windy every year. There's fires, and this is just like the worst one in recent history because it's like. But it's affected like Lahaina. Lahaina's historical town, Front Street, is like all commercial buildings, and there is some like shitty, impoverished neighborhoods, like old Hawaiian holdouts behind there that got burned out. So it's like I don't know. It's a convenient tragedy, maybe inflated, maybe.
Right.
I'm not saying like I'm not saying do or like somebody lit a bunch of fires, but it could have just been like.
Okay, let me run this by people because I follow this Twitter account called CBK News. It stands for Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, so it's JFK Jr.'s wife, and people believe it's her. And it's a massive channel, and it promotes these. It promotes every fake conspiracy or misinformation line, and she has a picture of a laser beam zapping Maui. And she says, I can't confirm this. Well, to me, that's the type of thing they put out there to make it look like anyone who doesn't think it was completely real is crazy. Like maybe it doesn't have to do with space energy or Jewish space lasers or direct energy weapons. Maybe it's simply deliberate negligence and waiting for an opportunistic time to let an accident happen. I mean, there's so many ways that this could have been done without reaching to the outlandish.
Yeah, I think it's convenient. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that whole area gets rezoned and, like, locals can't rebuild and it becomes all commercial enterprise. Like, because, like, north of Lahaina is all high-rise and condos and hotels, and south of Lahaina is all condos and hotels. And like Lahaina was historic. There wasn't anything above like 2 stories, maybe 3 stories. Um,
Interesting. So I'm just saying here that I'm open to the possibility that there's an incentive for disasters to take out certain areas, build back better. How big of an area are we looking at here? Like, is it within the realm of fakeability as far as you can surmise? Like, shut off a couple
well,
roads?
it's just, I mean, I don't know if you can look at a map, but like anything on the coast is where all the building is, you know, because it just gets higher and higher in elevation and like steeper. So it's, it hugs the coast.
I see. I see. Okay, well, it says here the death tolls climbed to 53. So that makes it very difficult to even question it without sounding, cold. But the fact is, listen to these headlines. This is why I question it. Maui wild. This is from Bloomberg. Climate change is wrecking former havens. When I saw fire, my first thought was, okay, this is going to be used to blame capitalism. It's the same old story,
Mhm.
and it's sick. It's sick if it's fake. It's even sicker if it's real, and they're using it to advance their fake science-based agenda.
Oh yeah, who said never let a good tragedy go to waste?
Yep, Rahm Emanuel, absolutely. Never let a crisis go to waste. And this is obviously kind of like going to be used on both sides because the left is going to say climate change, and then the fringe right will say direct energy weapons, deep state. And no one's going to say, well, did it even happen? Or was this just, who knows how it's going to turn out? But it's the state's deadliest disaster. All you're going to hear is climate change, climate change.
Oh yeah, they did a emergency, and I mean, but I'll tell you what, all those people are really displaced. They're all on the North Shore. Like,
Okay, so let me run this by you then, because Ohio, Palestine, train derailment, and a lot of people had to move because of the smoke. They were temporarily evacuated. And I presume that would encompass some regular people, not actors. But what are the numbers? Like, is it beyond the scale of what you could, you know, fake with actors? Are we talking about like lots of real people in the hundreds and the thousands?
um, yeah, I've heard like 2,000 people are displaced, 1,800 to 2,000 people, but like I can't say for sure. But I know I'm telling you that all the people that live over there, like I know a couple buddies that live over there, asked to like sleep on my couch or even pitch a tent. Like a lot of those people are over here on this side.
Now, you said that there were fires before. I guess this one's just not as bad. Yeah, see, I tend to think that, yeah, there's definitely some element of, or possibility of something being instigated or faked, but I don't know, that's borderline terrorism. It's more like opportunistically taking advantage of something that was going to happen anyway. But my suspicious mind on these things, when it comes to any event that has a political agenda attached to it, I tend to think there's got to be some level of chicanery here.
Oh, like sabotage, but via negligence or or
Yes,
or.
that's what I'm saying. Like the PGA fires. I was like, okay, maybe they didn't like legitimately just go out and zap these things with lasers like some of these crazies were saying, but it's quite possible that the negligence was calculated. Like let it be negligent so something can happen, or we can make something happen
Uh-huh.
and people will say, oh, it's because we were negligent. So they have plausible deniability and they set the stage for it to look like it was inevitable.
But I've lived here 10 years, and there's literally fires every year because this place gets dry. Even Lahaina, it means like dry sun, I think.
Dry sun. Okay. See,
Yeah, and that's where
that's
you get the Lahaina noon sun.
okay. Right. So it happens anyway. It happens anyway on some level. So like again, I'm up to the like my opinion of this is like it's like with the anything. If they can predict it, they can take credit for it, or they can plan for it and augment it. And it just seems like taking advantage of a regular cycle. Like every single year, there's a summer, and they act like it's new. And like, oh, this must be climate change. No, it's summer. It just depends on the level of credulity in the public what they'll accept. And most people will say
Yeah.
it's capitalism did that. Republicans did that.
Well, it's industry. Well, yeah, it's like industry, like the weather channel. Like every hurricane season, it's like stock up, go bags, buy your water. It's industry.
Hmm. Interesting point.
Is that capitalism?
Disaster capitalism is the phrase. Disaster capitalism.
Shit.
I mean,
But
but
yeah,
anyway,
anyway, it's
yeah,
really dry. It's really windy, and I believe there were extreme fires over there. To what degree it was fake or prompted, or I don't know. We'll find out though.
yeah,
It'll shake
exactly.
out.
I'm going to suspend judgment 100% until, but again, we appreciate the boots on the ground perspective, Rocco, and call back anytime.
Oh yeah, I hope to go over there this weekend actually and check it out for real. But
Okay, well, we'll be here and live and able to take calls, and we'll have the live voice chat open as well. So thanks for calling.
aloha.
Aloha, thanks. All right, everyone, that's Rocco Calzone out there at this latest. This is a pretty big story right now. Death tolls up. But my question is, again, as with everything, where does the real end and the fake begin? Is this being augmented? At a minimum, it's being used to make the case for higher taxes, basically, more regulation, guilt tripping you for your lifestyle, all you consumers and you breathers. Now, there's a little bit of a debate raging in the chat room about whether the Montgomery, Alabama fight was real or not. And a lot of the people that I'm seeing are commenting that it looks fake, looks WWE. But the lady at the end getting hit again and again looks really real. Joined here by Pete Shea, Gematria 101, Dominic Spiato says climate lockdowns are coming to an area near you. Yeah, look, that's going to happen. And my recommendation is lock down the climate change activists near you. You see someone recycling, report them. I mean, as an extremist, because they want to lock you down. Ubiquitous home incarceration, lock them down first. It'll solve two problems. One, it reduces their carbon footprint. And two, I guess the second problem it removes is they don't block the roads. They won't destroy irreplaceable works of art. We don't have to hear them pretty much just parroting every hysterical doomsday prophecy from Al Gorliani and his animatronic avatar Greta Thunberg. Into the Break says the fires are to wipe out the alien Bigfoots. Yeah, that was my second thought. Because aren't they responsible for most of the chemtrailing? Infinite Plane Trotter says UFOs and cryptids and shapeshifters are trending. Lean Dion says leaders pushing rising oceans all have waterfront mansions. Right. Yeah, I think that the insurance must be really high if you're buying property near the ocean. Because, like, okay, well, you're buying a property now, sir, but you know in 2030, you're going to be underwater. Into the Break says global warming affects past residents' personal chefs. So are you suggesting that the Obama's personal chef was just swimming, but the water levels were higher than he was used to, and he drowned? It might not have been climate change. It could have been caused by 57 tons of PPE. Infinite Plane Radio.
Yo, Tim, how we doing?
Hey, we are running here. Everything is moving along, full steam ahead. How are things over there?
Good. I'm up in Colorado. We've spoke before many times. My name's Count. We've talked about the moon, all kinds of stuff in the past. I noticed they they struck you down off of YouTube for, I don't know, gosh, it seemed like 3 months.
Yes. Oh yeah. We've been struck down so many darn times, but now we're back on with the 24/7, and we're always going to have a YouTube presence. So phones are back
Because,
on.
you know, you're one of my go-to just daily, you know, people I listen to. Probably, we won't get into all the people I listen to. It's crazy. But I will say this. You, about a year ago, started with the Jurassic thing, right?
Yes.
Right. And so I got turned on to Jurassic by you. And the first time I listened, I tuned in. I've studied some of Zach's work. I've studied some of Logan's work, which I'm sure you're familiar with both those guys.
Yes.
Right, the gematria, however you want to pronounce it, right? Gematria, who knows, right?
Jiffy.
And yeah, tomato, right?
They got the same gematria value.
Right. That's good. That's a good one. So, it's been a very intriguing study with the whole gematria thing. And if you look at, Zach's opinion versus Logan's opinion, Logan saying, hey, this is just some weird natural code that seems to be guiding this whole thing. And then you got Zach on the other hand saying, no, it's the Jesuits who are, they're writing the script, they're absolutely writing the script. So, somewhere in the middle, we got to find some common ground as to what the truth is. I would lean in some instances, I would lean very heavily towards Zach. When it comes to 911, that seems like a very scripted out thing. These guys are talking, there's Jay Ross, right? He does on YouTube, and he's like, his thing is always rigged and scripted NBA. It's like, how in the fuck are you going to, and I listen to it just to, be open-minded and say, okay, let's see here. I've determined that a lot of it is more on the Logan side. But getting back to Jurassic, I'll have to say that I wasted the better part of a year of my life listening to the fucking moron shit that this guy was putting out. Excuse my language. Okay? And so he's a good researcher, and he's very on it. Like, he knows a lot of things, but when we start getting into, and I told you, King County, man, it's named after Elvis. It's like, man, get that out of here with that shit, like.
Well, okay.
It's too
8-4 came and went. 8-4 came and went, and there were a ton of people on Twitter. There were tons of people out there who were saying Trump's going to get a headwind on 8-4, but none of them referenced JL. And then I hit him up on 8-5, and I'm like, hey, what's up now? Because if you add 365 to all of your calculations, it's not going to make sense. And everyone just kind of backed away. And my point being, there are patterns, there are connections, but when you start off with a conclusion and try to make a prophecy based on it, cognitive bias will drive you over a cliff like every single time. And that's what I've been on guard for. So I'm like, listen to JL and take the facts. Think about those facts. But I wouldn't arrive at the same conclusion unless you've somehow had the same experiences. So I disagree, or don't. It's not that I disagree. It's that I don't agree with, because I don't have the info to form that opinion that he's right about these predictions. But his observations, his correlations are really intriguing, and
they are.
It's fascinating. I mean, look.
I mean, when he took it back to Seattle Slew, I almost kind of dropped it right there. It was like, okay, man, well, Seattle Slew won the Triple Crown Cup, man, and see this number, and I'm thinking, why am I wasting my fucking time? Excuse my language. I should stop cussing. I don't mean, hope I won't get you in trouble. But you understand what I'm saying?
No, I'm a free speech absolutist here, and. It's frustrating, but what he did this last year is he de-emphasized the specific date, but now it has to happen next year, and it's like,
well, of course, yeah, right, yeah. Well, it's next year, so and I pretty much canceled his ass because it really truly was a waste of my fucking time. Goddamn, I keep saying that.
Okay, Q.
It was
the Q people.
Of my time.
The Q people are like, JFK is coming back on 11/22/21. He didn't come back. The Seventh-day Adventist said Jesus is coming back October 22nd, 18 blah blah blah, and it didn't happen. And they started a religion. So I'm starting to think that this dangling of a carrot is some kind of a psyop. I don't know how it all works 100%, but I think there's some kind of psychological mechanism that causes people to double down when they lose. And I'm not passing too many, criticism or judgment here, but like people who are gambling, for example, or stuck on gambling, they tend to live in a fantasy where they're about to win, and when they win, everything's going to be great, and they live for that feeling that I guess it's like a euphoric feeling the fantasy of being about to win. And that's what they're actually addicted to. It's not the money. And I think that when it comes to prophecy and knowing what's coming, I think there's some kind of addictive quality to it.
You hit the nail right on the head. Absolutely. There's no doubt, right? And his videos keep coming up, and I'm just at this point, it was intriguing, and again, it, and he keeps going with the Elvis and the Trump and the evil twin and the this and the that, and it's like, God damn, dude, you must
But
be fucking.
look, let me give him credit
Who
though.
put you up to this?
He said one of the wildest things I ever heard. He said there'll be a vision that the world will see Elvis shooting out of the Space Needle in some kind of spectacle. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to a lot of people. Then the new Elvis movie comes out, and I watch it, and the opening montage literally has Elvis shooting out of these three pillars in front of the International Hotel, which happens to have the Starship Enterprise on it, so it looks like a Space Needle. And then it goes to the scene where Elvis is passed out on the ground in a purple robe. They revive him with a needle, and it's like he's coming out of the needle as it montages into him live with the opening tracks. Thus spoke, what is it? The one from Space Odyssey 2001, where it's like everything he said that the world was going to see Elvis and it was the top movie and everything. It's like, wow, everything did kind of come true in this strange way. So if there is some kind of hardcore messaging that involves the icon, the idol of Elvis as some way of conveying a message, it's certainly happening. So I kind of I see his reasoning. I see where he's coming from, but I mean, it's all very, as you said, it's very perplexed. It's very frustrating if you follow it and you follow these trails. Like, does it actually lead anywhere?
Well, thank God I kept my mouth shut, because I didn't. I was really tempted to say, okay, be watching for this date, and I just kept I said, you know what, self, keep your mouth shut, because you're gonna end up. All it's doing, and I agree with your point, right? That's pretty interesting, and I'll have to look for that in the Elvis movie, which I didn't think was too. It didn't suck. It was an interesting take on Elvis's life, and it was all right. I thought the guy did a good job in the movie, and not everything that comes from Hollywood, is this predictive programming. Yes, are there agendas behind it, or if it makes it to the studio's desk, is the studio head going to say, hey, well, we need you to put, I need this in it, this in it, this in it, and this. Yes, okay, I could see some agendas being from behind the scenes. I've got some friends that work in Hollywood, and
Hmm.
it's a very controlled, very bizarre thing that's going on here, right? They're all on strike right now. My buddy's not working, and I got a couple people that actually are involved with Warner Brothers and Sony, and I'm in the music industry, so I've been in the music industry now for, I don't know, 40 years, long time, right?
Well,
So I've seen
okay,
my fair
okay.
share of things happen over time.
Yeah, well, this
Go
predictive
ahead. You're
programming
about to say
thing,
something.
okay, like the predictive programming thing to me, I noticed that it seems to only be relevant in the stuff that everyone can be expected to see, like putting us on notice. I wouldn't expect it to be in smaller productions, unless they're just echoing what the zeitgeist is putting out there. The Elvis movie, predictive programming, the main thing with the Elvis movie that my takeaway was, and it did have a lot of interesting connections, like the fact that it happened. Um, I think here's the main thing. It kind of conveyed the idea that Elvis was just was the product of cultural appropriation, and that he made it big on music that he didn't create, and the people that did create it were excluded because of race. So they kind of put that in there, like with the song Hound Dog, the original artist was performing it. They kind of put it out there that Elvis was kind of a fraud. Was kind of the idea I got from it. Uh,
Really? Okay.
I took that as a
That's your
subtext.
okay.
I mean, I don't think that, but I mean, I recognize talent. He seemed to be very gregarious and he reached out to people. But what they were saying, what the movie was insinuating, was that many of these other artists that he associated with, like, there was a few where he was like going to these clubs that they couldn't be mainstream, but he could cop their style and mainstream it. Like that, that song Hound Dog, and then there was this other artist that he met that was like had a certain style that he just picked up, and I'm thinking that kind of seemed to me to fit with the whole woke agenda and the disenfranchisement of Americans from their various icons and anything they have pride in, because all of it was, the product of systemic inequalities or inequity.
So I see now you just unlocked the agenda. So now we're in a brown black versus white paradigm, right? Where now all of a sudden it's like, what are we living in 18 fucking 12 here, 1876? They brought this back into the forefront of racism. It's like, why are we talking about slavery now? Most people have moved on from this, but I see your point, and that's a great point as far as that goes. How I see Elvis Presley, and I've seen lots of interviews with B.B. King and Little Richard and all these people, James Brown. They loved him, they adored him as much as he adored them. And a lot of people say, I'm in the music industry, and oh man, well, but she just ripped off. No, he was paying homage to them. He was enamored by black entertainers and by the gospel sound. He had the same three sister girls singing for him his entire career. Okay, so tell me he was a racist, and I want to confront Chuck D on this one, because Chuck D has called Elvis out to be a racist, and I've looked and try and see where's there some evidence of Elvis being a racist, and I just can't find it. I really can't. Yes, okay, you could look at it from a perspective, saying, well, he stole this music, and he got songs from Mac Davis, he got songs from everybody. He wasn't a songwriter, he was a performer, and he was probably one of the best performers of his time, and I wouldn't say the best. He's the best performer ever. We always hear this of all time, right? But if you look at the footage of him, he's not fronting. You know
Yeah,
what I
they're
mean by
trying to
fronting?
rewrite. There's a lot of rewriting of history, and I think that this would be an
Absolutely.
attack. Look, they're attacking when they're attacking Trump or the Q thing. It's a smear. Like they're attacking like the idea of middle America, the whole idea of like the train wreck in Ohio and white noise, Ohio, the heartland of it all. They've been attacking a lot of Americana. They killed the Griswolds with that movie White Noise by recasting him in this modern context where driving is just bad for the environment instead of connecting you with your family. And this Elvis movie, it seemed to me, another one of these kind of subtle attacks, because talent is talent. People just perform. They don't all have political agendas, and there's a difference between appropriating and stealing and emulating because you're a part of something. And I didn't get that necessarily, but the movie made it seem like it, like with Little Richard in particular, where and I was just like, this is kind of a buzzkill of a subtext here. I wonder if people are picking up on this, or if this is the read that they're supposed to get.
Right. Well, listen to this point. I'm a musician and have been my entire life. Okay, we're talking 40 years of playing in music. Every musician in the world steals from someone, and that's just the way it is. Everyone has an idol that they look at, or that they take influence from. Everyone. It doesn't matter if you're Michael Jackson, Little Richard, James Brown took it from so and so. The guy that before him took it. There's very few original people. You can go into the early 19th century and you can find them, right? I mean, James Brown being one of them. Did you ever saw the James Brown movie? They had him idolizing the preacher and just the whole thing. I thought it was very, very well done movie on Brown. But you're definitely right. I see them, placating him, what's the word I'm looking for, as a biter, and never paying homage to where he got the songs from. But not every song that he got was from an African American songwriter. Not all of them were. Again, I just gave you a great example. In the Ghetto was written by Mac Davis, and he certainly ain't a brother. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right. Well, I watch movies to review them, even if I know it's not really the type of movie I like. But I'm always looking to see, because like you can't really separate the movies that are released today from the context politically, how they're going to be accepted. Every movie has that really deep attachment to whatever is going on in the culture war of the time. Like this Barbie movie. Who cares about this Barbie movie? Well, every single conservative right-wing commentator was like, okay, we were about rescuing children, but now we're going to go after the Barbie because she's too feminist. And we got to preach, MAGA trad values. And so I'm like, this Elvis movie I think is just no different. That they couldn't just make a biopic. No, they had to insert something in there to appease the I guess the dominant elite and their woke sensibilities.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, they're jumping on. Look at the Alabama. You were just talking about it yesterday, the boat fight, right? And
Yeah,
I heard you say the words, yeah, it looks real to me. And you know what? Looks fucking real to me. It looks like a bunch of white dudes, drunk white dudes trying to swing on some brothers. But they're exploiting the story. That's all they're doing. That is not, to me, is not a fakeable thing. It's just exploitation. It looked way too natural. You can kind of tell when people are faking it. If you watch any of there's a series, it's called Shenanigans, about J6, and one of them is another fake cop. Have you seen that one?
I have not yet, but I'll look. I'm taking
Oh, you
notes.
haven't?
Is it part of Woo's News'
Yeah.
production?
No, Woo's News is the dude that did the Babbitt thing. And I got that from you. You're the one who put that out on the Woo's News, and I saw it, and ultimately 100% convinced that was a complete psyop. And you can see that it's a psyop. You visually looking at the people, you can tell that the cops that were standing in front of the door, when Homeboy shows up, changes his clothes, and starts hammering away at the window, and I asked some of my friends who are, on one side of the spectrum there, well, what do you think about this? Why would armed officers just step aside and stand there and watch this guy do this? This whole thing looks completely staged to me. Now, you can never convince someone who is a quote-unquote Trump hater of anything. You can never – you could show them the evidence and say, see, look, this is a lie. This is fake. Look, and they'll still just basically, like an ostrich, put their head in the sand, no
Yes.
matter how much evidence you
They
present to
have
them.
they have the MSM goggles on, and they see everything from the mainstream mediated perspective. And yeah, this fight looked real. Is it fakeable? My first take on it was when people are fake fighting, they fake fight like they're fake fighting, like they're trained to do it fake so they don't actually hurt each other. This looked a
Right.
little too erratic, I mean, it's so far away. But this, I mean, Jake the a-hole in the comments agrees with you completely about this. Whatever, if it's real or fake, whatever, the fact is they've exploited it and they've attached it to their bigger psyop entertainment media complex. This is use. It's a freebie for them, as I said.
It's something that happened that they're just exploiting. It's that freaking fucking simple. I mean, but let me just give you the rest of it. So look up January 6th Shenanigans, another fake officer, and it'll pop up. I can't believe you haven't seen this. It's really, really good. The premise is you have inside, you already have them, the FEDs in place, and they have a fake cop who seems to be coming down from a night of partying or something. He can't even keep his belt up, and another cop comes up. They take him down because he's disrupting the whole thing, and they keep saying, "We are one of you. We are patriots. Stand up, patriots. Stand up," because he couldn't even keep his belt on, and somebody went over and touched him. He says, "Don't touch me," and that's when they say, "Look, we are one of you." And then a real cop comes over and takes the guy over by the elevator and basically takes him over. Then he goes into the main room. You have to watch it. But there's a whole series. There's 17 videos in this guy's series, and I forget what it's called. But if you Google what I told you, it'll pop up. And it's fascinating because you can clearly see the evidence of the staging. And again, with the Woo's News one, I mean, I've been to concerts where guys, stand there and say, I just went to one the other night with George Clinton. And the guy, I'm an old school friend of George's, right? Known him for 30 years, toured with him, recorded with him, all these things. And this guy was not about to let me in. And so I've seen how security and cops, and if that was real, right, they would have stopped those guys right then and there. You would have never been able to take that helmet to that glass, period. Period. You would have never been able to do that. But let's sidebar. Did you see the interview with the shaman, the QAnon shaman?
You know, with Alex Jones, I was just watching that, and you mentioned you're talking about George Clinton, King of Funk. Uh,
Absolutely, Dr. Funkenstein.
oh, how cool. Okay, okay. Home of the extraterrestrial brothers. Fascinating. Um, let's see here. I'm going through some
George
photos
Clinton
here.
from P-Funk, Parliament Funkadelic.
Very cool. Now, anyway, I don't
Yeah.
want to get too off topic here, but yeah, as far as the Woo's News thing, for people who haven't seen it, he's put out a couple more parts to it, and I think he's done a part two
Okay.
and part three. Yeah, but on the Q Shaman, because see,
Well,
he's
let me
there
write
dead.
that down. What's the title, real quick, before you move on?
I think the second one is called January 6th, all 838 angles, or something like that.
J6. Let me
Yeah,
write this down.
yeah. Woo's News,
All.
because yeah, he did all. I'll get the exact number. I think it's 838 angles, where he looked at every single camera angle, and they matched everything from a timestamp. He did a timestamp to center everything, and what comes up here is actually quite revealing. It suggests a few things. It suggests that the so-called rioters were there before Trump was done speaking. And by the way, he's been
Mhm.
doing a number of interviews, this Woo's News character. I reached out to him on Twitter, and I'm hoping to schedule something here within the next couple of weeks, because it's a great area of research. If people haven't looked into it, J6 was totally fake. And so then you get the Q Shaman, who's at the front of this thing. And are we supposed to believe that he's an innocent bystander? That he's not part of the bigger psyop? Because I see him on Alex Jones, and he's very well spoken. He sounds exactly like
Yeah.
Owen
Yeah.
Schroyer level, in terms of his level of information. And after listening to him today, my takeaway, I think he sounds, in terms of his whole big picture, like David Icke. Like, I kind of think that he's there to fill in this big picture that David Icke used to give, and it's this kind of a new agey picture. But I didn't hear anything new from him. But I was surprised at how Icke he sounds. I don't know. What was your take?
Well, I was incredibly impressed with. I mean, I have to say that, I agree with his perspective. I agree with his concepts of consciousness and just the history and how we're here. I would agree with that, with what he was saying as far as consciousness and spirituality. I'm right there. I'm like, shit, this dude sounds like me. And everything that he studied, whether or not he's a plant or this or that, or he was just some dude that got caught up in the whole thing. Was he actually hired by the FEDs? I can't prove that. Because of, now, had he been stoner dude, and not had the knowledge that he had, and not had the vocabulary. And I mean, I was really impressed even by his vocabulary, just based on his look. And you saw what he said. He says, "Look, this is what I wear. I really want to be a shaman." Yeah, well, maybe he's taken too many mushrooms and too much acid throughout his life, but which would make you transition into a shaman.
Yeah, you know
But
what? I listened to him.
I haven't figured it out yet.
I just thought he sounded extremely polished, like he had just read every David Icke book and condensed it in like 5 minutes. And he was talking about fear versus love, and the idea that we're all having to overcome the illusion of separation, and consciousness creates reality, and that's why they psyop us. And like that's what I mean by
Right.
big picture. It goes very big picture. The only part where I sort of started to disagree is where he starts saying that man is responsible for anthropogenic ecocide, non-biodegrad- non-biodegradable chemicals that were destroying the world. So there's that aspect to it, and he's also of the belief. I don't know. I mean, what I'm saying is he's kind of standard red pill. That's my only criticism. But I'm just questioning.
Okay.
Is it possible that he's not a plant, just given the place where he was and the fact that he served 27 months? Just seems to me that if he wasn't a plant, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm at the point where his dad's a Democrat judge. He was 33 when he executed the thing. I just think he's just more than likely um, a plant. I mean, I have a hard time. I'm leaning towards plant, is what I'll say. I want to give
Hmm.
some kind of benefit here,
I'm
but
on the fence still on this one. I haven't. I saw the 33 thing, and believe me, you have no idea how many texts that I've sent to my people about, well, what's with the 33? Okay, what's with the 33 count? And then of course I'm texting Jesus 33, 33 on the bird of, the whole thing, right? We all know this. Like if you live in the rabbit hole like we do, because that's where we live, right? And to comment, yes, I've read all Ike's books. That's kind of what got me in. I read was it Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center when it first came out. Boom, then I got onto The Biggest Secret, The Children of the Matrix, and then We Are Free, and he got into the whole, illusion, and it's all just kind of a simulation, which kind of goes in with the whole Logan simulation. Like, what is this? What realm is this, and how is this code? Did the Jesuits and the Crusaders, when they led the Crusades, is the gematria the code of the universe? And that's kind of where I'm leading along, whereas I
okay.
agree a lot with what Logan is saying.
Okay, let me run this by you then,
And
because
the
I just learned
Jesuits
this.
found out about the code.
I just learned this yesterday, that the runway at the Kennedy Spaceport in Florida is runway 33, and that to
Right.
escape the Earth, escape velocity is the speed you have to make to actually escape the Earth's gravitational pull. And it's Mach 33, 33 times the speed of sound. And the number 33, insofar as I can tell, in its context, is always used to mean ascension, transcendence from the material plane into the celestial realm, heaven. So space travel,
Sure.
Mach 33. So that code, it's part of this, somehow, this gematria is part of this Kabbalistic paradigm, this tree of life um, cosmogony, and it is encoded according to this specific set of numbers and symbols and code, and it's reflected in all of the psyops. Why is another discussion, but it's definitely the case, and it's very consistent all across the board. Like I don't find usages of these numbers or symbols that contradict in any of these rituals. It's that predictable.
Right. The question is right. Is it, again? It's very simple. Did and the Jesuits weren't even around during the Crusade. It was the Knights Templar who invaded Jerusalem to get and stole the knowledge, right? And to me, that's the knowledge that they got from the Hebrews, right? Is the knowledge of gematria, and at certain events they're manipulating and they're following the code. Otherwise, everything is just coded in this sense. And, I think in some respects, if you were to start to look into your own life and, in upcoming death, right, that you could probably figure it out. And it's probably something that you don't want to know, which is why why Zach's been accused in some forms of witchcraft, because if you look at it from that kind of perspective, it kind of is a kind of a witchcrafty thing. They're spells. These are spells. These are codes. These are things that are governing our system that we live in. So, where is everything rigged and scripted? No, I don't. It's an impossibility unless, of course, we go to 2001: A Space Odyssey and we think that, well, this realm is controlled by a gigantic organic quantum computer. We're living in the mind of God, right? We actually live in the mind of this whole realm is God. Everything is connected with God through the periodic table of elements, just like Logan's saying, and many people have said before, even getting back to Drunvalo Melchizedek. I'm sure you're familiar with his work with the ancient secrets of the flower of life and the whole
Sacred
soft thing and the
geometry.
whole,
Now,
of course, right?
okay, so this is all very intriguing because before I ever looked into the news, like I didn't care about it. I just assumed, okay, man is bad, world's screwed, focus on my own career and life. And I was always guided by synchronicities. I was always picking up on patterns, but in my own life, to where it was uncanny, to where I was noticing like same time of the year, almost the same type of situations would arrive. At times, there's some predictive capabilities, like little things stand out to me. And I've been noticing this for some time without getting into specifics. My point is, I was already picking up on synchronicities, and it seemed to be like part of the whatever explains this realm and how we move through it. And then I start paying attention to, of course, the news media and all these psyops, and I'm like, why are these psyops and all these events seemingly just rife with synchronicity and the same types of patterns? So there is this kind of interesting thing where does the calculated scripting of events by man end? And where does this quote synchronicity begin? And I'm careful not to mystify things. I'm careful not to attribute it to a higher power or to AI, but I can't explain necessarily synchronicity and then the apparent manufacturing of such within the media. But there's something to it. It ultimately has to do with time control, if you ask me.
Definitely, right? I mean, there's some people out there that know what's up. We just don't know them, and they won't talk to you or I. So, I'm under the firm belief that, that I think even that Shaman says about the interdimensional beings that are, within our realm. I met a very interesting man named Jacques Tombiasen on an airplane flight to Philly 20 years ago, right after 9/11, and I had a whole pile of books. I had the Da Vinci Code and the this and that, and of course, you sat next to me, and you're going to get an earful, and we're going to have a really killer conversation if you're open-minded and can not get judgmental or put yourself on one side or the other, which is a very difficult thing in today's world because we've all been so polarized, especially lately. I think Trump was the ultimate the polarizer, right? Trump came along, and I'm not saying he did it intentional or anything like this. He could be being used without his knowledge. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's a part of some big game. I don't know. But he was the man that came in and said, okay, and I don't mean this I'm just saying figuratively. Because of him, the line was drawn in the sand, and that's where the cancel culture came in. And I've experienced it with my own family, with friends, with people I don't even know,
Yeah,
um,
look, Trump came in and it divided the conspiracy theorists. It went from politics is rigged, let's study the fakery and the conspiracies, to Trump's here to solve the conspiracies and beat the deep state. It divided my servers. His effect has been huge. But you mentioned AI or some kind of super intelligent computer like HAL 9000, and I have this theory here. I call it the meta script, where yeah, everything can't be scripted, but you can have a big script, like for example, the global warming script. Oh yeah, we're going underwater in 30 years. And then you just write
right.
everything to conform to that model, that script. And I think that we have meta scripters. And there's a play from the 1960s called Newsbenders about the news agency that writes the stories 5 years in advance. And I think we're written in a news bent reality and they write it 50 years in advance. And someone like Trump is given a lifetime role because nothing else can explain the 60 years of predictive programming that goes into that man. 60 years. You can find predictive programming for him. He's hardwired into our mental matrix through the media. He's a scripted character. Same with Elon Musk. I mean, I'm not saying anything more than these are actors who are participating and probably insulated. They don't have to know the big picture, but I think they're puppets. I don't think they have real
Well,
power.
great point. I mean, we don't all know, but if the Warner von Braun thing, or if he wrote that the governing body of Mars would be Elon, right? And now all of a sudden we got Elon going to Mars, and so there's your synchronicity, right? And I agree with the synchronicity aspect of you looking at the world because I've experienced the same thing, and I believe that people that listen to your content and other content, we have been enlightened in a way where we can see through, read between the lines, like George Carlin said when he did the the moon landing hoax video, right, on TV in the 80s, the comedy skit.
Yes, yes. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, he definitely. You couldn't get away with that today, which is funny. It's just funny how standards are so flippant.
well, my point is that we have the ability to read between the lines, and sometimes we might read between something that's absolutely wrong, and because we have our confirmation bias of our certain, maybe not belief system, right, but what we tend to think what we think is correct, right? So that even comes into our own confirmation bias, and don't get it twisted. Me and you and everyone who are rabbit hole existers, if you will. It's wrong word, bad word.
Spelunkers?
Belongers. Yeah, we're belongers, right? Yeah,
Spelunkers.
right. We're part of this club, right? And we can even be victim of our own confirmation bias, and we have to really, really look at things before we make a judgment on what is real and what is not. To sit back and tell yourself, okay, hold on a second. Don't let my confirmation bias, get into this.
Yes, that's the main thing here. I've been talking about the original skeptics had a phrase, epoche, which meant suspension of judgment until you have more facts. And this idea of auto hoaxing the MSM is specifically that. It means we're so skeptical that we're going to wait until we have more information before we judge one way or the other. They're not going to coerce us into agreement, and we're not going to rush to judge it to be fake unless we have more info. So suspension of judgment is huge. And then the second part of it is we have to recognize that we're all dupable. That doesn't matter who you are dupable. Like, for example, your eyes will tell you that boats go over the horizon. Well, that's angular resolution failing you. A P900 would
Right.
disprove that. So we have to recognize the limitations of our senses, and then also sleight of mind, how logical fallacies can cause us to accept a faulty premise and set us on a wrong azimuth. So I'm with you on that. We are dupable, and I'm not quick to rush to call everything fake by any means. And you mentioned George Carlin. Well, see, George Carlin's a character who obviously seems to be off the rails, but weirdly enough, before 9/11, he was making jokes on a comedy tour called I Hope a Lot of People Die. And guess who he was joking about? Planes crashing into buildings and Osama bin Laden being sent by the FBI to blow stuff up. That was George Carlin's comedy skit before 9/11. So I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
even if he's not 100% a puppet, they have to be given talking points to participate in this game. They're running with certain memes, like, hey, we need you to disseminate this idea and that idea. Christopher Nolan, the guy who did the Batman movies, his movies are just rife with predictive programming. Kubrick's movies too. So when I look at, like, you've been around film for many, many years. Look at Stanley Kubrick's film The Shining. Everybody knows about how it has some indications that he knew about Apollo 11 and possibly did it. But what many of those people who point that out fail to mention is that the movie contains a lot of eerie predictive programming for 9/11. So 9/11 and
Mm-hmm.
Apollo 11 both encoded into this movie, where even the hotel manager at the Overlook Hotel looks exactly like JFK. And there's some suspicion that the JFK assassination was another Kubrick psyop. Fascinating connections,
I've heard you talk on that. Yes, I've heard. Continue. Go ahead.
so my question is this: do you think it's possible that we'll just call it the Kubrick department? Do you think there's a department that somehow is part of the government but has its hands in all the major movie production studios, or the big ones anyway? That I mean,
Well, it's very simple to do. Here you go. I can tell you, because Hollywood has writers that work for. Back in the day, you got signed a contract. If you're a writer and you're a script writer or a screenplay writer, you sign to the agency. Now, as the director of artistic whatever, right? I come to you and say, okay, Tim, listen, we want. Boss wants a movie that deals with these themes. A lot of the agenda here in the next coming years is going to be dealing with racism and blah, blah, blah. So what I need from you are 3 movies that are going to give me what I want. I need examples. What I want you to do first is go out and get me some real true stories, and maybe we'll base something off a real story, or maybe we'll just make it up. But here you go. What we need is this, X, Y, and Z. Okay, Mike, call me in 2 months when you got your thing. And then you come back. And then that's when, and anybody who's dealt with Hollywood knows, you go in with your dream You set this up and they say, oh, well, you know what? We're going to take this out. We're going to put this in. We're going to take this out and put this in. Now, if you deal with this and you go rewrite this and bring it back, okay, we approve it. Great job. Thank you very much. Well, does he know? Does the director know that he was being used? No, he doesn't. He might think, and maybe on the inside he's thinking, okay, well, but he as a puppeteer, you can use the puppet without the puppet's knowledge, and then all you do is end up getting frustrated. In the end, they kill you, and that's it. It's over. It's
It's
just the end
compartmentalized.
justifies
Yes.
the means.
I could see it working and it's so uncanny. Like Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco, Texas, the day after the Netflix series Waco, American Apocalypse begins. Game of Thrones has a new release where the queen is dying while giving birth because she can't have an abortion and they say we have to let her die because we need another male. And this is right after the Roe v. Wade leak. So, in addition to predictive programming, I've been finding what I call concurrent programming, where real time real time TV shows correspond to the news, which is impossible to be coincidence. Just the timing of it. Like, they're coordinate. Like, what I'm saying here is that it's not only predictive, but it's concurrent. The programming is parallel. You can look at Netflix and pretty much see what's going on in the world, but in some of these instances, like Trump's campaign taking off in Waco or the Roe v. Wade tie into Game of Thrones, those would have to have been planned months to a year in advance, minimum, in my opinion.
Oh, no doubt. That's exactly what I'm saying, and I'm trying to think of a million other examples that we could give of that. Okay, so I think Zach did some really great work on the Herbert Hoover connection with Kamala and President Ford. And I'm sure you're aware of that, right? She was born on the day that Hoover died.
Oh no, I didn't know that. That's fascinating though. See, that's the stuff that.
Okay.
Okay, go on, go on.
All right, so yeah, there's more to it. So here, I'll make it. So basically, there was an interview with President Ford in the 1970s of a junior high school girl who asked President Ford at the time, "Will there ever be a female president?" He said, "Well, yes. And how it's going to happen is what you're going to have is an elderly president who is either going to die or be removed from office or for whatever reason gets taken out. And that female president will become the president." And that was at the Herbert Hoover Library, like on the day, I forget what it was. I have to look it back up
I
on his.
recall now, and most people here probably heard it. Where he specifically says that we would be getting a female president when an older president somehow gets sick or dies.
Yeah.
Or something. That was actually a very specific, almost prophetic thing that is right now poised to happen. It seems like any day now.
Well, and right. But the question is, was he just pulling at straws? And you have to say, okay, some of this is part, again, of this script. But was it a written script? And did they hand that to him and say, okay, here's the predictive programming? I can't answer that with 100% certainty. I can speculate on it. And this is what I've learned from my 35 years of living in the rabbit hole is, again, don't let there are coincidences in the world, and there are political coincidences. This is undeniable. Not everything is a script. And this is a bitter pill for me to swallow, right? Being a researcher and wanting to, of course, be able
Fit
to,
your research
predict
to your
things.
model. Right. That's a natural tendency. Well, so let me bring this up. When the 2020 riots really kicked off, uh, President Trump said, when the shooting starts, no, he said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And that went viral. Well, he claims he doesn't know this, but that was from George Wallace, 1967, a segregationist or something, where that was a phrase used in the late 60s. And I had noticed that
Right.
many catchphrases, many of the themes from 1967 to 1968 were superimposed over the 2020 news cycle. And I wasn't the only one who noticed this. The term coronavirus came out of 1968. Like a million things from
Sure.
68 resurfaced in 2020. And Trump said,
Absolutely.
he said, I didn't know that's where that phrase came from. And so I realized, wait, he didn't know. But that was given to him by somebody who did know. Just like Jason Aldean's album, Try That in a Small Town, he didn't know the courthouse was where somebody was lynched. But the people who made the video, they knew because that video is being used as part of this bigger psyop. And so some of these artists and politicians may have plausible deniability, but that's because they're willingly useful idiots.
Sure, I can totally agree with that. And again, the puppet is it
Or stooges,
me.
puppets. I shouldn't say idiots because they actually know. I'm just saying that they're giving themselves they're playing a role. But yeah, I think that he may not have known that hey, this has racist connotations, and it's going to harken back and it's going to tie 2020 to 68. I really don't think he knew, but I think his handlers did, and he has to take the heat for it. But so in other words, yeah, to your point, not everyone is scripted 100%, and there is some real stuff here and there. But I'm thinking more in broad strokes, like the meta script. As long as everything ends up at the right destination, there's some flexibility. But I do think they plan things in broad strokes, and then from there they go down to the minutia.
Good point. Good point. I mean, my biggest contention is because I've seen really good. The the Trump that I like is the sit down Trump who, and I'm neither a Republican or a Democrat. I've never voted in a presidential election in my entire life. I I just haven't. Right. I've never even voted in anything. And a lot of people really, a lot of my friends come down on me for that aspect, but it is what it is. I think my biggest thing is this, is this a situation where it's completely WWF or E, whatever it is, and we're all friends. But even in that world, not all those people are friends. Okay, it's not like they're all in on it together. And the question is he, did he jump in the game, and does he know the game, or is he just simply being played by his handlers?
Look, I see where you're coming from, and when he first emerged on the world stage, I remember the birther thing. Again, he's sacrificing his political career or his private career as a very successful TV star to do politics. But the more I look at it, like 4/4 anniversary of MLK's assassination, he gets arraigned, and there's so many connections to every single one of his events. They frame him up as like a Christ, as a martyr, and the more I look at it, the more I think that no, this is a psyop role that is part of the bigger picture, like Elon Musk. These are like big roles that they need a character to fulfill. And the more I look at Trump's predictive programming basis for this character, and there's a lot of people pointing this stuff out, much of the predictive programming seems to put him in the role of an antichrist, of some kind of a deceiver. And right now he is worshipped as Jesus and or as working for Jesus by many Q people. And you may think it's a small fringe, but it's actually indicative of I think a bigger picture here that Trump is a character they created to be a a false savior. And I think that we're witnessing.
Yeah. But did he sign up for it and say, yeah, I'll play that role? That's my question, right? And so now that you tipped on QAnon, again, here we go. And so funny how Q has dropped out of the picture, right? You rarely hear about QAnon. And the thing is if anybody can believe that someone, whoever, just like the creator of Bitcoin, and people are saying, oh, well, if you really look at it, well, we don't know. It's Satoshi Nakamoto or but there's no spokesman. But anyway, sticking on Q, if anybody thinks that we wouldn't know who this person is, like when you can't have an IP address without knowing who this, it would be exposed. There's a true psyop right there, QAnon, right? And I'm sure you agree with me. There is a scripted reality script, if you will. I know it
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
stupid,
It's an alternate reality game.
That's a great
That's
example.
yeah.
There
There's
you
a
go.
there's a
Like
good
that,
way of describing it. Jim Stewartson invented these things, I think, and he's been investigating Q for some time. He calls it alternate reality game, where they give the public a way to get engaged in order to emotionally tie them to their communities and stuff. It was all a game. Operation Trust, a fake anti-communist movement that captured all the people who were anti-communist, and Q
Sure.
Shaman was interviewed, as you mentioned, I watched it, and his take on it was that Q is like 10 people. It's like a group, like it's not one person.
Sure. I could believe that. That would make a lot. It's not. It's definitely not one person. No, definitely not. It's a group. It's a psychological operation to its T. And I mean, it's just so obvious, right? Yes, I agree with the fact that it's not one individual because it can't be. That's why it can't be. It
The-
can't just be one person. It has to be a protected group, an esoteric group of people.
It was a very successful psyop because it definitely did serve as a way for the mass media to scapegoat any kind of right winger. It basically smeared the right wing as terrorists, as being radicalized, as cultists, and then they can manufacture bad guys, run psyops, and just blame this quote Q. And yeah, it's such a hit piece, and I'm surprised
Well, look
it's.
at what I do.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead, Vince. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just surprised that it's still staying around. Where now you have QAnoners posting Q drops from 6 years ago. And it's like, okay, now you guys are reaching. I mean, there's no way that he gave you information 6 years ago that would only be relevant after Trump loses and then comes back. I mean, they're reaching. It's pretty sad at this point. But yeah, it was a very successful psyop, and a lot of people can't pull themselves out of it.
Look at what Ice Cube is doing. He's putting his neck out on the line, saying, you know, the club. You know, same thing that George Carlin said. It's a big club, dog, and you ain't in it. And he knew what was up, right? George knew, and Cube knows. The gate. He calls them the gatekeepers. He doesn't call them the club. But if you're not in the club, the gatekeepers don't let you in the arena. You know,
Well,
you can
okay,
kind of get in the arena.
yeah, Ice Cube was in that show called Are We There Yet? It was a TV show. And in one of the episodes, and this clip circulated widely a couple years ago, he was portraying like an FBI agent in this sitcom. And everybody's quarantined because of a quote monkey flu. And he goes to the other characters and he says, "Oh, yeah, this was just a drill to test everything out. There's not really a monkey flu." And they're like, "Oh, can we leave quarantine?" And he's like, "No, you guys can't. But I'm going to Vegas." So, in that movie back then, major predictive programming for the fake lockdown situation, and it's Ice Cube. And I'm like, that's interesting. So, for him to comment on this stuff, yeah, he has some weight because he's done that. He's been in predictive programming for future Cywar.
Okay. Interesting, interesting. Let's finish out on the moon because we've talked a lot about this, and I've been observing the moon cycle, and I'm going to turn you on to some information I don't know whether or not you knew.
Okay.
So what I've noticed is now from say because I got on, you know, I got turned on by Mark Sargent, you know, 6-7 years ago, and then came Eric Dubay and all the whole thing. We all know all about it. I started studying astronomy through observation, and it's a very difficult thing to do because, you know, it could be cloudy that night, it could be this, and the lunar cycles are so, you know, different because, you know, on the full moon, it's going to rise when the sun is setting. So if you take a circle and you draw on the piece of paper and you put your cross of the zodiac in it, what you're going to find out from the lunar and solar cycles are very simple. My determination is that the sun and the moon are a unified cycle. They're a unified system. They work in tandem with each other together. And this is, and from my observations, I can prove this from what I'm about to tell you. Okay, so what you have happening is if I'm facing south and I find the ecliptic plane, okay, it runs from east to west. What it runs is about 35 degrees north of east and setting 35 degrees north of west. So when something rises, say Mars, it's going to rise north of the eastern horizon, and it's going to generally set north of the eastern horizon. A planet like Jupiter or Saturn are going to do the kind of a little bit more of the opposite, where they're going to set a little bit more south of west. They don't really change, although it's hard to follow the planets because they're on such a different time schedule. It's not like you can stay up all night every night observing this. But what you're going to see is after every full moon, okay, let's say in the summertime. Okay, so the sun in the summertime is going to rise north of east, and it's going to set north of west. Well, the moon in the spring here for the past 3 months has been rising on the full moon south of west, about 35 degrees south of west, and setting 35 degrees south of west. I'm sorry, it's rising 35 degrees south of east. So imagine yourself facing south, and you look to the left. You're going to go down a little bit towards more south, and guess what? You're going to see that full moon rising, and it's going to set south of west. Now, what it's going to do after it's full and it's waning, it's going to work its way up the horizon every single day until it reaches the sun in the morning. And the day or two before the new moon, if you're up when the sun comes up, you will see that moon rising, going right towards the sun every year after year, resetting every 19 years, right? So what we're witnessing above our heads is literally a clock. And it's synchronistic and it's exact. It's every single time. It never changes from this system. That is not random. That speaks to coordination, right? Or what's the word I'm looking for, Tim?
So the Metonic cycle, the 19-year thing, that's interesting for a lot
Right.
of reasons to me because I noticed that when COVID-19 happened, it was preceded by that Comet 19, and it's like 19 years after 19 hijackers. And the,
Right.
the 19 thing is like AI, and that's also encoded into a lot of this stuff, AI 19. Then you have Operation AI, that was Pearl Harbor, which took out Bill, which was on 12/7, which is kind of, I mean, the whole thing, you just go into it. The number 19 seems to refer to some kind of timing by which they introduced generational psyops. Like we had 19 years of radical Islam, and I'm like, are we going to have what, 19 years of domestic violent extremism? 19 years of viruses instead of terrorism. So
Yes.
there is
I agree with that
definitely
one.
there's a big 19 component in so many of these big psyops.
Sure, absolutely. But sticking with the lunar, we have it's pretty amazing. If you start watch, I know you're down there in New Mexico. You've got big open skies down there. But if you have a view like tonight, okay, so the moon is going to rise. I think at around 2 in the morning tonight, maybe 3. If you're awake, go outside, look to the east, and you'll see the moon rising north of east. So not 2 weeks ago, it was rising 35 degrees south of east. Okay? So again, every single month it follows the same path. And this is not random. This is not just some random rock, if you will, a satellite, moving around our planet, around our realm over our head, because that's what I actually believe it's doing. Because I don't believe that, through my investigations, that we are traveling through what you see above your head. What you see above your head is either just simple projections, kind of like what Vibes of the Cosmos is saying.
Yes.
Everything that you see is a projection of the energy field that's down here in the realm. Okay, it's not objects that are out there. It's being projected almost onto a screen.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought
or
up Vibes
something.
of Cosmos because, I look at the moon and yeah, does it look like a rock? Does it look like, I mean, and I find it contradictory. I'm really puzzled by synchronous orbit and tidally locked, and it somehow spins every 27 days and we never notice. But the picture presented by Vibes of Cosmos seems to make a ton of sense, and it would suggest that the moon isn't a rock that's been pelted with smaller rocks, that those are not craters, but that the dark spots are indicative of land masses and it's actually a projection of what we're on, or at least a circular portion of it, a lensed, and then it's projected somehow onto the ionosphere. So, like, I find that to be very interesting, and I am not of the opinion at all that the moon is a rock that's tidally locked with us and in synchronous orbit. I don't
No,
buy that whatsoever.
I do. I not after I've noticed what I've noticed. And 3 months ago, I drove from Des Moines, Iowa, to Denver, Colorado, and I was traveling at 75 miles an hour, and the moon stayed with me the entire time. So I determined that upon moonrise, right, that you could drive 100 miles an hour, and you could basically, the moon will follow you until it sets. So you could drive 1,000 miles, and this is one of the ways I'm trying to determine and figure out how this is working. So I was on I-80, and I'm driving about, I was speeding five miles over the limit, right? Speed limit 75. I'm driving directly west, and from the time that the moon came up, and once it like caught up to me, like directly to the east of me, or so I'm driving west, so it would be to the south of me. The moon, never got above about 40 degrees of the ecliptic. So in other words, the moon is really, really low over the southern horizon, right? So when you're following the moon in the spring, it's always going to be south of where the sun is rising, and they switch places in the winter. So as we get into the fall and the winter, and I've been writing this down every day where the moon's rising. I have a little chart that I've been keeping. What we're going to see is in January, you'll see the moon in the place where the sun is now, almost directly over your head, but the sun is going to be where the moon is now, low on the southern horizon. You feel me? So they're basically switching positions throughout the year, working in tandem. But no matter what happens, no matter where that moon is set, on the new moon, it will always crawl its way up. And this year, what's going to happen is when it's, let's say in the wintertime, the sun is rising south of east, the moon is going to be rising north of east. And what it's going to do, I'm going to observe is, are we going to see the moon after the full moon? So let's say the full moon in December, the moon is going to be rising south of east, and the full moon, or the sun is going to be rising south of east, but the full moon is going to be at the exact opposite of where that sun is. So it's going to be when the sun sets on the full moon, that it's going to be 35 degrees south of west. Well, the moon is going to be rising 33 or 35 degrees north of east. Are you following me?
Yeah, I'm
How
following
this
you.
works?
And I would like for you to continually call in and keep this conversation going, because what we're doing here is assembling more information, because like it's not enough to argue if the moon landing was fake or real. That's like a stale old debate. I've always been like, let's take it to, if we're right, then what? What's the next step? And to me, Vibes of Cosmos is next level, and it's basically observation based, and I find a hard time refuting his alignments with the continents and that specific cluster of craters. So I'm not making any specific statements about what it is, but I don't think the moon is a landable object, and I think it's certainly not made of petrified wood, which you would conclude if you examined the moon rocks that the astronauts brought back down.
Well, it's possible that the souls in our solar system, just like Santos has said, and he didn't say that the souls come in through the sun and exit through the moon. That's my concept. It's his concept, with the whole solar system. But I've had weird thoughts that maybe how we enter the realm is through the sun and we exit through the moon. Okay. But what we're going to observe here, and I want the people who are listening to really observe what I'm talking about here, because we're coming up to the next great American eclipse. So what we're going to observe here is once the moon switches positions, because I was actually able to predict solar eclipses based on moon rising and sun setting and sun rising and sun setting. And I actually got on my phone and said, okay, where's the next solar eclipse? And it just happened to be over Africa. And it was like last year when I predicted it. I didn't even know that there was one coming, but I said, wait a minute, something's different about the whole system here. I'll bet you there's a solar eclipse coming. And sure enough, in the next month, there was.
So you predicted a solar eclipse without accounting for any curvature or not assuming a ball, just based on observations. And
just off observation, right. And allowing, and a lot of really good weed, allowing the universe to actually speak to me, because that you have to ask the universe the questions. You need to look up into the sky and kind of meditate and allow this to happen. And I sit there as I question, and I know that I'm never going to get the answer because I've studied the ancient scripts of the Kabbalion, right? Are you familiar with the Kabbalion?
Yeah, the seven, is it seven scribes or seven sages? And yeah,
Right,
the Kabbalion.
right.
Yeah.
It's all based in early Hermetic philosophies, if you will. Before Hermeticism came on, it was the Kabbalion. Okay, and it tells you that as a human being, as you might be able to get answers in the spiritual realm, but as a human being, it's almost kind of pointless. And it could just be something again like Plato's cave, where the Kabbalion is telling you, shut the fuck up and pay your taxes and get to work and don't worry about what's out there because it's meaningless to you. Live your life and enjoy what this is while you're here, because when you die, you're not going to be able to take your ego with you. And that's the whole concept of Thoth, that he was able to, if you read John Valo Melchizedek, that he was actually able to take his ego with him upon death. And that's the whole thing that, that people want to do. They want to be able to take their ego and their known personal self with them into the next realm. Well, that might not be a possibility unless you can reach, this certain level of consciousness and literally, like Ezekiel, ascend into heaven, right? Ascension, just like you
Or
were saying earlier with the 33.
like the Upload. There's this Amazon series called Upload where you can have your consciousness digitally uploaded into this cloud where you can exist in a heaven-like state, but you're still connected to the internet. Like they've been selling the public on this idea of digital immortality, where, like you said, it's only about preserving the ego and then putting it into a new body. It's about not letting go of this self that you created while you were here.
Right, right. Absolutely. And is it right or is it wrong? I don't know. Is it right to be able to, maybe that's what can get you out of this soul harvest? Like if you listen to Bro Sanchez, I'm sure you know who Bro Sanchez is, and I'm surprised you guys haven't had
Oh
some
yeah,
good
actually,
conversation.
look, my very first live stream interview or conversation with another live streamer was Bro Sanchez.
Yeah, I hate how he debates because it's like, bro, I don't want to call him bro, like, bro, bro. He gets a little too, I don't know. A lot of times he doesn't let people speak. I love his content. I think that some of his work is just fabulous, right? And we're all listening to each other and determining what's right in our own mind, right? Because isn't that really, if you take the quote from Henry Kissinger, it says, the truth doesn't matter. It's what's truth to you that matters, right? Because you're the individual. You're the one that has to. Shit, it's my daughter calling.
Well, hey, look,
Hey, Diddy.
I want to say thank you for calling. We covered a lot of good ground here. Um, I'm glad
Hold
you.
on, Kitty.
Hey, look, yeah, stay in touch though about the moon observations. We need to continue this
Okay, yeah.
conversation about the moons. I've had you on here
We
for
do.
a
You
little over an
changed your
hour, but
number on
yeah, we're doing this
me.
pretty much every night. So any night you want to call in, but let's continue this conversation. I've taken some notes on some of the things you said I should look up, and yeah, so definitely stay in touch. I appreciate you calling in. And anything else?
Okay, just let me just sum this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to observe moonrise and moonset, sunrise and sunset until the next great American eclipse.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So what we're going to observe when the moon is going to start rising north of east and the sun is rising south of east, okay? And then we're going to work our way up to the eclipse. And we're going to do this together with the community that's out there. So now that you have the new phone number,
Okay. And I
I'll
have
be
another
calling
caller
you
coming
back.
in, but we will definitely do that.
Okay.
Have a great night. The Great American Eclipse, which I think is coming up on 4/8, the big X. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hey, I'm Gennaro from Bakersfield.
Oh, cool. Bakersfield.
Yes, I just wanted to bring up some points that I was like observing in the news the other day. So I saw you touched on that the Peruvian alien story, right? That was on some like tabloid website.
Yeah, the 7-foot tall Peruvian aliens that are terrorizing the village.
Yeah, Yeah, I feel like they're gonna be pushing a lot more stories like that. Like I was, I remember like looking into like Catholic apparitions, and like some of the last like really mainstream ones happened in like the World War II time, and these stories are pushed out as like legitimate. Like a lot of the like the last one, the one in Portugal. And I feel like the alien stuff is going to be like kind of similar, where it's going to be like pushed out mainstream, but like kind of fringe. And it's just going to go down as
Okay, well, look,
like something that really happened.
I think it's interesting and notable that it's in Peru because I look at the big picture wise. The most of the skeptics who break down media the level we do, we're kind of fringe as it is, but around the world, most people are just gonna accept whatever's on the news. I think generally speaking, the billions, and it's a numbers game, and I think they can get everybody, the majority, in all these places around the world. It doesn't matter what a few people can say to contradict it, and I think that yeah, aliens are part of this new religious paradigm, and especially I think religious societies are going to be very susceptible to it. I think that the people who are already inclined to be believers and trusting of authorities because it's their morally virtuous duty to do so, they're going to believe in and probably kneel to whatever new authority that the alien brings down. Like they're working with the government to get rid of nukes and we have to recycle and no more capitalism. Whatever they do, yeah, they're going to I think this is going to be a big easy it's going to be an easy sell around the world, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to like the old Catholic apparitions that they used to kind of like. Till today, I think the Catholic Church backs that those things actually happen, and I think people believe them to be like facts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I guess now people kind of like outgrew that. Like, I don't think anyone like, actually believes that it happened anymore. But maybe like a couple hundred years ago,
Yeah, I think
like Catholic believers believe. So that's like the new religion.
yeah, there's a lot of miracles in general that they're bringing back. And you have like more recently, for example, I was thinking about the ISS and how they levitate, and that's like a miracle. And so I'm looking into this, and it turns out that early Christianity had a lot of levitating saints. You had, like, for example, Saint Francis of Assisi could supposedly levitate. So levitation was a sign that you were spiritually elevated. Like these astronauts are so elevated they levitate. So they bring back these archetypal images of what it means to be close to God, to have God's eye view. They float. And it's like, yeah, we're looking at it and it's science and all this stuff. But no, actually, I think they're tapping into our subconscious and tapping into powerful archetypes with everything that they do. And when they bring back the aliens from space, it taps into so many myths about spiritual beings, elevated beings, and gods that yeah, people will kneel. I think it's just part of our programming. It's our they definitely know how to operate on us on a subconscious level.
Yeah, I think so too. It was really crazy seeing that article. It's kind of like the first one I seen recently. But also I wanted to bring up like the oh yeah, the Q thing. I don't know if you remember way back in like 2015. Well, I remember seeing it back in 2015 or maybe 2014. The cult of Baal paradigm. It was like a diagram of like the cult of Baal. Do you remember that diagram?
I think I know. You said the cult of, did you say Bob? Like J.R. Bob Dobbs?
No, Baal, like Baal.
Oh yeah, Baal, Baal. Yeah, Baal worship. The obelisk, shaft of Baal. Baal means Lord. It's the god of this world.
Yeah. So do you remember that it was like a diagram that was like on like Facebook or something or like somewhere on the internet?
I don't think I've seen it. I think maybe I'm certain I've seen it, but I'm not sure which one you're referencing. You can send me a link if you like.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to put it on the YouTube live thing. But the guy that was pushing it at first, he was kind of like you, like, and this was like way back in 2014. Except he would go a little haywire once, like so his belief was all the elite went all the way back, so like it came out of this one empire that just conquered the whole world,
Okay, I
And
know who you're
it was
talking
like,
about now. I know exactly who you're talking
yeah,
about.
you remember?
I will dig it up. I will find it because there was someone else who had done similar
And
research to
he,
me and arrived at similar conclusions about the role of the cult that runs the world and the symbol of the obelisk and all its different iterations.
right. Yeah, that was crazy. And then, but okay, but he would go kind of crazy when out of nowhere he'd be like, well, the solution to all this is Donald Trump. And like, he's like, because Q told me on, because Q is telling us on the internet like we're like a community, and like the Democratic Party is like the cult of all. And I
Y-
was just like,
Interesting.
that was 2014.
I'll
Yeah, that
dig
was
it up.
crazy.
I'll
But
dig it
now it's
up.
crazy that you're still on that wave.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Donald Trump came in and he promised to save everybody from their conspiracy theories that run the world. He's going to end chemtrails. He's going to end child trafficking and adrenochrome consumption. Like all the bad stories we heard about, he was going to fix. And it was a good sell and it captured a lot of people. Anyway, appreciate the call very much. Definitely call back anytime. We're going to be closing up here in just a moment, but we'll be definitely starting earlier tomorrow.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, I'll call back. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right. Have a great night. All right, everyone, we are closing up for the evening. We've been doing a lot of tests. I want to start the 24/7 think tank chat and everything, but I need to build some more playlists first, which I'm working on right now. So this evening, I'm going to be in the Discord chat and I'm going to be building some playlists. And then so tomorrow, 8/11, the last of the dog days, we'll make that the official day that we turn on the 24/7. Assuming that the NASA asteroid strike doesn't result in our death. They shot an asteroid and it broke into 37 chunks. Each one would be like another Hiroshima. So we might have 37 Hiroshimas, and that could be tomorrow. So don't look up. We've been talking about fake nukes a lot. We'll continue. Trump will get mug shot. Trump will get a mug shot in Georgia. That was just put out in the news. He will get a mug shot. Somewhat ominous. We talked about the real fight in Montgomery that might be fake, or it might be a mix of real and fake. It might have started off fake and then some people jumped in. But whatever the case, I'm pretty sure that the chairman, Reggie Gray, 42, is some kind of a callback to Reginald Denny and the black on white being hit with an object. There's something to it. In black and white, it's thesis antithesis. It's the Hegelian dialectic. You want to mix the two and bring out the synthesis. Well, what do you get when you combine black and white? You get gray. Reggie Gray. Again, Reggie means king, and the LA riots that Reginald Denny is a callback to is all about Rodney King. Does anybody care to guess how many times Rodney King was hit with a baton? Joined by Scorpio88 says, great show, keep at it. Thank you for joining. You're at D Live. And look, I really would love to just keep everything on right now, but I do want to put together some playlists and I want to intersperse it with music. We have a lot of music, so I'm going to be going back to the catalogs. It's going to be a late night, making everything perfect. Yeah, 33. Yeah, 33 is the answer to that. Infinite Plane Trotter says 7-foot goblin aliens. That's hilarious. It's a bunch of Tesla droids being tested. Right, Boston Dynamics. Fascinating. Okay, let's see. I had a few other things we're going to talk about. Look, Musk and Zuckerberg are supposed to fight, but now they're talking about doing a noble debate. They're just going to talk about how to fix the world. They're not going to actually fight. That's the talk right now. He says, that's really fighting. It's a noble sport. We also hope with humility to express our admiration for those who have fought for noble causes. So we're hoping for a cage fight in the Coliseum. And we've talked about Zuckerberg and how historically he's reprising the role of Augustus Caesar. Not only is he obsessed with Augustus Caesar and gave himself that haircut on purpose, but he's in charge of Facebook or Meta. Thumbs up, thumbs down. That's definitely Caesar gauging the will of the fickle mob. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Well, it turns out that Zuck named his children Maxima, August, Aurelia. Why Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg keeps naming his kids after Roman emperors. So Roman Colosseum, circus, bread and circuses. It all makes too much sense for Musk and Zuck to be fighting it out in the Roman Colosseum. Like, it's just too perfect. It's poetic. If they don't do it, I'd be very disappointed. Then Musk has size. Zuck is 5'7", 150. Musk is lying when he says 187. He's got to be 220 or something. Someone remarked here, it was Lean Dion, about, oh yeah, how the Q shaman might be used to help sell the whole alien agenda. And yes, there's definitely something to that. In fact, I think it's absolutely that he's part of that. A couple of the topics I really want to get into, I guess we'll cover this mostly tomorrow morning. I was doing some research into the birds aren't real. And here's a meme by Cubstar. Birds aren't real isn't real. So the birds aren't real movement was set up to discredit people calling stuff fake. Cameron Kasky is a Parkland shooting survivor who was involved with them. Weirdly, I didn't know this. This Birds Aren't Real was started before Parkland happened. So I'm like, wait a minute here. This is kind of strange how this obvious government-controlled anti-conspiracy theory PSYOP movement has in its inner circle there, in its organizers, the guy who started the March for Our Lives. Like, it's a little close. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that the Birds Aren't Real billboard popped up not that long after our own Research Flat Earth billboard. And I'm looking at this, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that the birds are fake might have been deliberately set up as damage control for conspiracy theorists getting outside of the YouTube echo chambers and making any kind of ripples in the world. If you haven't seen it, we did a billboard outside of a busy airport, 35-foot wide, 10-foot tall, Research Flat Earth, and then we got a lot of news coverage on the thing. Even the New Yorker did a story on us, just pointing it out that soon after this, Birds Aren't Real shows up on a billboard, and a fake conspiracy group, and it gets a lot more attention than we do, obviously. Damage control. It just seems like everything we see is damage control. Okay, so sign up for the newsletter. You will be receiving a newsletter tonight that will contain links to the archives to tonight's show. And again, we're going to kick off the 24/7 tomorrow on 8/11. We've entered the run phase. We've overcome all of the obstacles to being live 24/7, to be able to take calls, and I don't think that we're going to have any sort of obstacles from here on out. Now I'm just going to find the best possible schedule to reach as many people as we can, and I think that we're looking at twice a day, morning IPS deprogram and evening open phones. So thanks again for joining. Thanks to all the callers, and as I said, I really just want to take the evening and set up a few playlists, and I want to make sure that we get a lot of the artwork and I'm sorry, the videos, the music videos put into the routine here, among other things. I mean, we have South Pole, we have a lot of content that I would like to bring back out. Again, if you're in the chat, I'm putting a link in the chat there. Go ahead and subscribe. This is When I Jack in the Shells, Pope Elon, joined by Project Honda Rod says, just got my world stage deprogramming guide. Thank you for ordering. By the way, go to timosmond.art. I'll be listing another copy as well as some keychains.
And if you're going to pick some place to...
Now, one more thing. Elon Musk talks about dying on Mars. I'm like, okay, you're a risk taker. You're going to die on Mars. You say so. But now you're afraid to fight Mark Zuckerberg? He's like half your size.
It's like, we're all going to die someday. And if you're going to pick some place to die, then why not Mars? Okay. You know, if we're born on Earth, why not die on Mars? Seems like maybe it'd be quite exciting. But so I think, given the choice of dying on Earth or dying on Mars, I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll die on Mars. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake.